Hi, I'm really honored to be here today with Gideon Levy, who I think for a lot of viewers will need no introduction. Gideon is a longtime columnist at Haaretz and one of the most, if not the most prominent Jewish Israeli critics of Israel's oppression of the Palestinians. And Gideon, I'm just very grateful to you for doing this.
So grateful for you to hosting me. For me, it's a great honor, really.
So I'm gonna start. I think about you a lot, even though we don't know each other very well, but I think often, how did this guy come to be who he is? And what is that like to walk around day to day being Gideon Levy? So let me start at tell me about your childhood, how you grew up, and about the political milieu in which you grew up.
Sure, Peter. Those are different times. I grew up in the late 50s, early 60s in Tel Aviv. Most of my social surroundings were Holocaust survivors, one way or the other.
Were your parents Holocaust survivors?
They left at 39, but they were definitely refugees.
Yes.
My father came in an illegal boat, half a year in the Mediterranean without food and water, refused and rejected in any possible port in the Middle East until he was detained in Beirut, Lebanon. My mother came with a special project of saving children, also at the age of 16, alone in the world, to a kibbutz. But the whole atmosphere was so different around us. And I was brought up in a non-political home, unlikely our mutual friend Amira Haas,
Mm.
brought up in a communist, very
Yes.
ideological home.
Yes.
My was not political at all. My parents tried to survive, to make their living, no pretensions about changing the world. I mean, I guess they were so grateful that they made it. Economical conditions were rather poor, but then we didn't feel poor because everyone was not rich. And I was really a good boy in Tel Aviv. I did all the right things, believe me. When I look at myself at this age, I am much more forgiving to the current young people with all their ignorance and stupidity and nationality and racism and many times militarism. I was the same. So I absorbed everything from the brainwash system, and I was really a good boy. I went to the army radio station. I did even something which is worse than this. I worked for 4 years with Shimon Peres, which put me obviously in the left side of the map, but far from my positions today. I was a good Zionist, no doubt about this. And then only in the late 80s, when I started to work for Haaretz and travel to the occupied territories, the beginning was so innocent. A friend of mine, a member of parliament from Meretz, Daddy Zucker, called me once and offered me, let's go to the West Bank. There are some uprooted olive trees there. An old lady lost all her olive trees. Let's go there. And we went there.
And Guido, you were at this point in your 30s, in your 40s. How old were you at this point?
This stage, I was in my early 30s
Early 30s.
and still believing in all the cliches that they taught us that we are the weak ones, we are the David, they are the Goliath, we are always right, they are always wrong. We want peace because we say shalom. What is more of true? Nobody told us that they say salam. Yeah, Israelis, the Jews, we say shalom. So there's no peace seekers bigger than us. All those things I believed. And I also believe that the Arabs, the Muslims, have only one thing in their mind, and this is day and night to think how to push us to the ocean. I really believed in it. By the way, Peter, until the age of 20, 25, I never heard the word Nakba. Never heard it. I used to see the ruins along the roads, even in Tel Aviv. I never asked who was living in those ruins and where are those people today. I mean, so many questions which were totally denied, hidden, forbidden. I mean, total different discourse and agenda. And then I start to travel to the occupied territories. After this incidental trip with Lady Zucker, I went a few more times. And I realized two things. That one, that's the real drama of Israel. It's there. And the second one is that there's hardly anyone to cover it. And then gradually, not in one day, nothing was in one day. Gradually, I decided to dedicate my career for covering the occupation. And gradually and slowly, my positions changed and changed and changed. And they are still changing, mostly more and more radical, separating with Zionism. Those are very painful decisions. They were not made in one day. It's really a process. The more I saw the occupation, the more I thought that Zionism is behind it from stage one. And slowly I became whatever I became.
Are there any particular, you talk about a process, are there any particular moments that were particularly powerful you, particular conversations or particular things you saw as you were going through this process that were a kind of revelation?
I'm always disappointing when I answer this because people want to see you dreamt one night and you woke up and Prophet Isaiah or Prophet Jeremiah your dream, except of the first trip to the occupied territories as a journalist, which was a moment, but only when I look at it backwards. When I went there, it was nothing special.
Yes.
There's one point which I can really define as a turning point. After many years of, and this is much later, after many years of believing and writing and struggling for the two-state solution, I was once invited to South Africa by the foreign ministry. I was also at Mandela's funeral, but this was later. But when I went to this trip, I came back with different thoughts. This was the turning point in which I understood that I have to get out of the closet. For many years, I spoke about the two-state solution, knowing that it will never happen. Spoke and spoke and spoke and denied and cheated myself because I knew that nobody is going to evacuate those hundreds of thousands, 700,000 Jewish settlers. And without their evacuation, there is no two-state solution. But I had nothing as an alternative. And this trip to South Africa made me believe in the one-state solution in the way that the unthinkable should be thinkable.
Yes, yes.
That things, I mean, I remember before the fall of the apartheid system, and even immediately after it, when everyone say there will be a terrible bloodbath, all the white ones will be slaughtered. I mean, horrible.
Yes.
And I remember two moments. I remember a white junction in Johannesburg, and I remember someone I met, a black guy who had a white secretary. And all of a sudden I said, a white beggar in South Africa, a white secretary of a black man. I mean, this is possible.
Yes, yes.
And this was the moment really I felt relief because for many years I couldn't suggest an alternative to the two-state solution. And all of a sudden I said, yes, it is unthinkable, but that's the only solution left.
Yes.
And this gave me a lot of energy to start a new discourse.
Yeah.
Not speak anymore, not about settlements, not about borders, but about democracy and equality.
Yes. I'm curious about some of your first interactions with Palestinians when you started going to the West Bank. I will say for myself that it was only when I started spending time with Palestinians that I realized how much racism and dehumanization I was carrying inside myself, because I would meet people and they would be extremely normal and thoughtful, interesting, funny, whatever they were, just normal. And I would be surprised, and then I felt ashamed because I was surprised, right? Because I realized that at some level, I thought they were programmed to kill Jews, to hate Jews, something like this. So I'm curious, what were those early interactions like with Palestinians when it became part of your journalism? This has been a free preview of my weekly conversation. If you'd like to hear the rest and support my work, please consider subscribing at peterbeinart.substack.com.